If any of you are interested in Chinese history, I think you may be interested to know about some of the ethnicities here in China, so I'll try my best to explain them. Well, at least some of them, because there's 56, and each one of them can be broken down into different subsets, and there's different ethnicities that aren't recognized, and some of the ethnicities are only a couple thousand members. But anyway, the Han are the largest by far, with about 92% of the population, but even they can be broken down into different groups. For instance, about 80 million of them are Hakka, and they have their own architecture and customs. For instance, they didn't bind their feet. Historically, the Hakka are famous because a lot of them took part in the Taiping Rebellion in the mid-19th century. Otherwise, a lot of them share the same region as another subset of the Han, the Cantonese, who famously have their own language. Most of them live in Guangdong. And keeping in the south, there is another group called the Tanka, but they're not recognized and nobody really knows where they came from, but they're more than likely Han, although I could be wrong about that. But they are essentially boat people. Otherwise, a lot of the groups you may have already heard of, like the Tibetans, Mongols, the Manchus who formed the Qing dynasty, and the Uyghur Muslims in the West, all of them have a few million members each, and a lot of the ethnicities are just other nationalities. For instance, you've got Koreans, Kazakhs, and Tajiks. But the second biggest group in China is the Zhuang, with about 20 million members. Now, they largely come from Guangxi, a province that the Chinese government has always struggled to assert their authority over. And in terms of a historical event, if any of you are familiar with Hearts of Iron, and I'm sure there's some overlap between people who watch my videos and people who play Hearts of Iron, the Zhuang are mainly the people who formed the Guangxi clique in the south. Otherwise, there's the Wan. Now, these live in both China and Burma, and they haven't caused too much trouble in China, although they are allegedly very heavy drinkers. But in Burma, they've sort of broke away and formed their own state, and the Wa state. And they grow and sell drugs to China, and they also sell a lot of rare animals too. And in return, China largely funds their army and sells them weapons. And there's the Miao from Guizhou. Now, they're famous for having elaborate hair and clothing, but historically they have launched rebellions against the Ming and Qing dynasties. However, they proved disastrous for their population. For instance, in the 17th century, with the help of a few other ethnicities, the Chinese government was able to suppress the Miao and even castrated the men. Plus, there's the Hui. Now, they are Muslims, but unlike the Uyghur Muslims, nobody really knows whether these are just the descendants of Han Chinese who converted, or whether they came in from somewhere else. But anyway, their status throughout Chinese history has fluctuated a lot. Sometimes they had very high positions in society, but for instance, during the Mongol Yuan dynasty, a lot of Muslim practices were banned. And in the 19th century, they launched rebellions like the Dunghang Rebellion and the Panthai Rebellion against the Qing dynasty. And in the 20th century, they had clashes with the Tibetans. In Yunnan and Sichuan, there are the Yi. Now, these used to be, until very recently, shamanistic, and they actually used to capture other ethnicities and have them as slaves. And there's some debate as to whether or not the Nanzhao state in the 8th century was ruled by them. Plus, on the Laotian and Vietnamese border, there are the Yao, and now they haven't been a lot of trouble in China once again. But in the Laotian Civil War, a lot of them fought against the communists. So once the communists won, they were persecuted, and that's why a lot of Yao are now living in the United States and other places. Finally, the Mosu. Now, these are famous because they pretty much set up a matriarchal society where women live by themselves and raise the children, and it's only the man's job to look after livestock and occasionally go over to a woman's house secretly and sleep with her. Otherwise, all the wealth and property is owned by women and passed down to other women. Oh yeah, I should add as well, I'm in Xi'an at the minute. There's the wall behind me. And this is a bit of a crossroads of a lot of ethnicities, but I should say, I appreciate I've missed out a lot of ethnicities here, but hopefully this gives you a little bit of a better understanding about all the different groups in China.